Today on Just in Perspective, Secretary Hegseth blows off allegations of war crimes in the Caribbean by blowing up more drug boats in the Caribbean. The Supreme Court agrees to rule on President Trump's challenges to birthright citizenship. Netflix buys Warner Brothers, and the suspected January 6th pipe bomber admits to the crime. I'm Jared Justin, and this is Just in Perspective. Secretary of War Pete Hegseth has been in hot water lately as Democrats have claimed that he illegally blew up some drug runners after their boat had already been eliminated with a second missile then, and they were just floating on a plank in the middle of the ocean somewhere like the end scene of Jaws or something. Take a listen.
Based on what you've seen here, Mr. Secretary, was that second strike, was that a war crime?
The second strike is a war crime because these individuals were injured, they were in the water. The basic rules of war that are involved here make very clear that you do not strike wounded people in the water in order to kill them.
Now, if this were true, I'm not really sure why leaving these guys out in the middle of the ocean to presumably be eaten by sharks is better than just finishing the job, but apparently that's where we're at. The problem is that it doesn't actually appear to be true. The accusation is that Secretary Hegseth ordered the second strike to finish these two guys off, who they could see on camera. But Secretary Hegseth's own admiral, Admiral Bradley, said this didn't happen because he was the one who gave the order. So he said actually Hegseth had already left the room after the first missile was launched. And even in that, it doesn't appear that it was actually a war crime, or at least not clearly a war crime. It seems that on camera they could see that these guys still had access to a radio, which means they could phone reinforcements, hop on a boat, they're still in the fight. And from a legal perspective, that means they are still potential targets. So calling this a war crime seems like a over-exaggeration, shall we say. Which makes a lot of sense because this is what the Democrats tend to do. This is just another example of how they're trying to undermine the Trump administration. And, calling out the Secretary of War as a war criminal would implicate all those who carried out the order. It doesn't just undermine him, but it could send a whole bunch of people to military prison. If that were true. So this is a massive allegation, and once again, just another example of how the Democrats, in their effort to go after Trump, they end up hurting a lot of other people along the way. There's a lot of collateral damage with the way they attack him. Obviously, this is also about incriminating the war on drugs. Everything that Trump does well, the Democrats have to fight against to say that he's not being effective. He's been incredibly effective thus far, especially on the border. We don't even talk about the border anymore because he shut it down so effectively. And this is kind of the next stage of that particular piece, is stopping all the drug runners that are trying to get stuff into our country. And they've been super effective. I'm honestly amazed that there's still boats running through those waters, trying to get through, because I think like 23 boats have been eliminated at this point. But what's funny is the most recent Democrat president, Joe Biden, actually said that this is the fight we should be fighting. Take a look.
Every president for the past 2 decades, Democrat and Republican alike, has declared war on drugs. And each of them has lost that war and lost it miserably. They lost because they attempted to deal with only part of the drug problem. They lost because their initiatives were pulled apart by bureaucratic squabbling among their advisors. They lost because they always did too little and they did it too late. We don't oppose the president's plan. All we want to do is strengthen it. We don't doubt his resolve. All we want to do is stiffen it. The trouble is that the president's proposals are not big enough to deal with the problem. We think we should do more to stem the flow of drugs across our borders, and we think we should go one step further. Let's go after the drug lords where they live, with an international strike force. There must be no safe haven for these narco-terrorists, and they must know it. We have to lock up the dealers for a long, long time, and we have to attack the source from which the drugs come. And we have to do that not a piece at a time, but all at once. And we have to do it now. And there's not any reason why we can't do that. We have the power, we have the money, and we have the knowledge.
Isn't that great? 20 years ago, Senator Joe Biden thought we should be doing exactly what Trump is doing today. And I don't think he believes that anymore. I've long pointed out to friends of mine that Trump isn't really a conservative on things like abortion and stuff. He's even somewhat liberal. Really, he's a centrist from 20 years ago, right? But today, of course, he's a far-right Nazi extremist and fascist and king. That's not because he's moved his beliefs. He really is the same guy he used to be. Look up any old interviews of him. He hasn't changed. It's really just the left has slid so far down the slope. You know, they talk about the slippery slope. I think just in general, they've slid so far down the slope and so fast, they can't even see the center anymore. So way over there is Donald Trump in the center, but he looks like a far rightist to them. That's actually, I would say, the difference mainly between Trump and Vance. Vance is much more of a conservative than President Trump is. Now, he does a fantastic job of unifying with the president on policies and things, but we've seen little moments where there's some clear disagreement as far as where they stand on certain things, especially when it comes to foreign affairs that showed up the most. Is actually what makes me excited about the potential of a 2028 presidential nomination for J.D. Vance, which seems likely. There's some great candidates out there, but J.D. is certainly a front runner as an option. In other Trump news, which of course all news is Trump news somehow these days, the Supreme Court has just agreed to rule on the president's calls to end birthright citizenship. You may have remembered him calling for this very early in the presidency. I think this is fantastic news. The decision probably won't be made until middle of the summer. But I think we have enough conservative judges on the bench to make a good ruling here. They've actually already this past summer ruled 6-3 to allow Trump to try this in a small capacity in just a few places over this past summer. So there's already some precedent here. And this would be really good. It would be a huge shift. I mean, the 14th Amendment has been around since 1868, because it was ratified after the Civil War, and it was to grant the children of slaves immediate citizenship, and that gave them legal protections at birth. Just 30 years later, though, in 98, in the United States versus Wong Kim Ark, the Supreme Court ruled that anyone from anywhere could travel to the U.S., drop a baby, and that baby was a U.S. citizen based on the language of the 14th Amendment, which was always fan fiction. That's not how the amendment reads. In fact, I can put up the text for the amendment here. That being said, it has led to what are referred to as anchor babies, which is when some family travels here from another country while pregnant, usually, and they have a baby in the U.S. so that the child is a U.S. citizen, anchoring the family here, really muddying the waters when it comes to immigration enforcement. It gets pretty difficult to deport a family then when one of the family members is a citizen. Of course, a baby that's a citizen does not legally make it okay for the others to be here. It can't sponsor the family to be here. But it certainly puts a strain on the social services. It really muddies the legal waters on immigration. And it just doesn't make sense. Now, I have heard some saying that we're the only country who does this. That's not actually true. Canada, Mexico, some South American countries, a few countries overseas have similar laws. The difference is nobody's trying to get into those countries. How many desperate families do you think are breaking into Uruguay so they can have a baby so that they can stay there? My guess is it's probably a lot fewer than are coming to the U.S. So it really just is a different issue. So I don't think there's really any reason we should continue doing this. There's no American upside to this policy. So very good news that the Supreme Court is going to rule on this. In more cultural type news, Netflix is buying Warner Brothers. Now, remember back when Netflix used to send you rental movies in the mail? It kind of sent me back thinking about this. I grew up in a household with 3 brothers, and of course my mom and my stepdad. And we watched a lot of movies, but of course nobody had the same taste. So we were constantly rotating around who gets to pick the movie. And I remember we had the Gateway desktop in the corner of the living room, and we could get on there and get on Netflix and order what movies we were going to have next. And it was a fun ritual. Certainly was a lot easier for my mom. You know, we had the minivan, two-tone, you know, rust and purple, and loading everybody into the minivan just to head to the movie store was a lot of work for my mom. So Netflix was a really good service. Then I remember Netflix going online initially, and they just had, as you can imagine, just a really limited library of movies they were able to purchase and put on their platform. I don't even know if they had any original shows to start with or not. I remember some friends had that service. We never got it because it just didn't seem to have a lot of the stuff we wanted on it. But now it's a multi-billion-dollar company, and it's buying another multi-billion-dollar company. The proposed acquisition is for $82 billion. It hasn't been accepted yet, but they're the high bidder. Both Republicans and Democrats alike are crying monopoly, antitrust busting laws, and you know, just a few years ago, it feels like Disney bought Fox, which was another massive acquisition. People were saying, of course, the same thing. And fortunately for those who thought Disney was going to be too powerful, they decided to tank not only their own brand, but their Fox brands as well. And they've made a disaster out of their brand lately, which is an absolute crying shame. Obviously, this is going to give Netflix, if the deal goes through, it's going to give them a massively outsized share of the entertainment market, which gives them a ton of power. Frankly, I'd be more concerned over this if it were over like a necessity product, like oil. You know, if there was an oil company buying another oil company and they were going to own half of the oil company across the country or globe or whatever else, that would be really concerning. But this is entertainment. You can turn the TV off and walk out. And this is the thing. I mean, if you're the kind of person who hears this kind of news and gets really, really worried, I'm glad our politicians are. They should be appropriately handling the legality of these things. I'm not a lawyer. When it comes to just everyday individuals, if you're upset about this kind of thing, stop giving them your money. It's as simple as that. Their power is their money, and their power is coming directly from you. So if you're supporting them, you are complicit in what they're doing, like it or not. I remember some of my conservative friends, when Disney went woke and broke, they started shoving all that garbage entertainment out. I canceled my Disney Plus membership just because I didn't like the product anymore. And I had some conservative friends that not only didn't cancel, but still have their Disney Plus memberships, but complain about the product being put out just as much as I did. And I remember just thinking, like, you don't have to pay them. Like, it's not a necessity. It's just entertainment. entertainment is important to a degree, but there's so many different things you can do. I mean, go outside and play. Like, I know it's getting cold out now, but there's different ways to play outside now. But there's so many things you can do with your entertainment time. The watching of the shows is the single least productive thing you can do. And I'm not really bashing it, because my wife and I like to watch a show to end our evening as well. That's something we like to do together after the kids are down and chores are done. But I mean, you don't have to pay any specific individual company for what they've got. Netflix has varying degrees of quality on their platforms. I know plenty of people have liked some of the content, but there's also some stuff that's not so good, and there's some stuff that's woke as well. And so who knows what they're going to do with the Warner Brothers properties. Obviously, that's a massive company with tons of IP, which is the main reason Netflix wants it, is they want things like Batman IP, for instance, one of the biggest intellectual properties that exists. But the bottom line is, if you're going to pay money to a company that you think is too powerful, or in the case of Disney, for conservatives, hates your guts, you can't be too upset with how they're using your money. That's a choice that you are making. All right, let's get to a comment. A recent commenter named Me, not me, that's their profile name apparently, said, Trump just wants to go after people that Biden pardoned, nothing more. Trump doesn't know people that he is pardoning and has admitted that much. I agree, but you can't make it retroactive. So this is in response to a short I put out about Trump put out a Truth Social saying that all Biden auto pen signatures were null and void. So any documents he signed that were executive orders, bills, pardons, anything like that. And the point of my video was to point out that, first of all, a Truth Social, a tweet, whatever, isn't a law. So don't get up in a wad right away on that. It's something that, if it's pursued, it's going to have to be litigated, because there's going to be massive consequences if the auto pen isn't a thing, because the auto pen has been used for decades. Now, Obama was the first person who actually used the auto pen to sign a bill into law. It used to be like, the president would sign cards and stuff with the auto pen, and so it wasn't such an issue. But the point of my video really was that the auto pen just shouldn't be a thing. The fact that we've now normalized over the past decade and a half, well, getting close to 2 decades now, the fact that we've normalized that the president or his staff can use the auto pen, which is a fake signature, to sign things like bills and pardons is ridiculous. The president shouldn't be able to do that. The power of the president is so important, he should have to use his hand to sign documents because it's verifiable. And the very existence of the auto pen calls into question exactly what's being questioned about Biden when it comes to the auto pen, which is, did he even know the things that were being signed into law with his signature? Did he even know? Of course, that's a question of Biden's competency, which has been well talked about. But also the auto pen itself could say Jill Biden just, she likes a thing. Could she just go use the auto pen without Joe knowing about it? Could some staffer do that? There's not a ton of information I have about the checks and balances when it comes to that. Presumably there's some. Certainly there should be at least multiple stages of verification on that process, but I don't think this should be allowed ever anymore. Trump himself has even used it, just not for important documentation, but the president just shouldn't have the ability to do that. They should have to sign things with their hand. I understand it's convenient. Obama, when he did that first bill, it's because he was overseas and he needed to sign a bill that was back in the States. So he gave approval over the phone, and a staffer was able to use the auto pen machine. But this comment about, Trump just wanting to go after Biden's people, maybe, I don't know. At the very least, it's a good thing that the conversation has been brought about, that the auto pen isn't a good thing. I think a lot of us were just naive to the use of the auto pen and what it was and whatnot, but there's an obvious issue here, and I think it actually could be one of those unifying issues that we can all agree on. Because whether you're on the left and you think that Trump can abuse the auto pen, or if you're on the right and look at some decent evidence that the Biden administration was abusing the auto pen, it just shouldn't be around. That's not the kind of thing that's going to unify Americans, because it calls into question the validity of the things the president is signing, which is a very dangerous place to be. Now, did you know that on January 6th, 2021, there was actually an attempted pipe bombing? I didn't. I'm sure this was in the news to some capacity, but in the hay fever to go after the rioters at the Capitol, somehow lost in the shuffle was the fact that there was an individual who actually showed up to eliminate people, politicians. This individual put pipe bombs outside of both the DNC and RNC headquarters that he made from, they're homemade. They're made from pipes from Home Depot and things like that. The individual's name is Brian Cole Jr. They've gotten him. It's been 5 years, but they just got him. And what's interesting is in the press conference, Pam Bondi said that no new information was acquired to make this arrest. No new evidence, no new tips from the public, nothing. This was an arrest completely made with evidence files that were acquired under the Biden administration.
The FBI, along with U.S. Attorney Pirro and all of our prosecutors, have worked tirelessly for months, sifting through evidence that had been sitting at the FBI with the Biden administration for 4 long years. Let me be clear, there was no new tip, there was no new witness, just good, diligent police work and prosecutorial work.
So with all the January 6th probes, all of the committees, all the press about January 6th going after every person who cracked a beer on the Capitol that day, not endorsing what happened, but let's be honest, they were very thorough in going after these people who may or may not have wanted harm. They failed to go after the one person who showed up with weaponry to do damage. I find that amazing. I think it says something about the motives when it comes to the optics of that situation, and potentially says something about the motives of the attempted killer himself. Now, apparently, the suspect told the FBI in his interrogations that he believed the 2020 election was stolen. He believed in the conspiracy theories there. The left is trotting that out. NBC News has that. A few different programs do. Obviously trying to show that this was another MAGA conservative. But there's counter evidence coming out too. And I'm not just talking about the counter evidence of the Biden administration chose to not go after somebody who is an attempted murderer who they had all the evidence to arrest him on already. That's evidence enough, in my opinion, but it seems that Brian Cole Sr., his father, owned a bail bonds company that specialized in helping detained illegal immigrants get out of jail. And Brian Cole Jr. worked there. Brian Cole Jr. was working for his dad in that effect. Does not seem very right-wing coded. Also, apparently he's an anarchist, which, I mean, we can tell by his actions that he's an anarchist, but apparently he's a stated anarchist too. Also not very right-wing coded. So it's a bit ambiguous. I'm not a big fan of the finger pointing. I definitely believe most of this violence tends to come from the left, and I didn't say that before Charlie Kirk's assassination. I was much more nice about it, but with the amount of people who came out and cheered on and celebrated that event, or at the very least excused it as he had it coming or whatever, there's clearly a different approach, shall we say, to the extremism between the left and the right. And make of that what you will. But what we definitely should be able to admit is the people who do the thing, not all the people who cheer it on, that's another conversation, but the people who do the thing, do the criming, they're mentally not right. Okay? So that's why sometimes the party lines are a little ambiguous at first. Usually we can tell later on it's a little bit more clear, but a lot of times on the front end there's like some extreme change from one end to the other. You know, there was evidence on Charlie's assassin that his family was right-wing, right? And so everybody was coming out saying, well, this was really a MAGA guy. Well, no, he rejected his parents' morality and went the other direction, but not till later in life, as far as we can tell. This guy seems to play both sides a little bit, which, I mean, honestly plays out in the fact that he planted an explosive outside of both the DNC and RNC headquarters, trying to do damage to both parties. This does not really seem to be a party lines thing. This is just an anti-government thing, plain and simple. Now, he has admitted, the New York Post has, that Brian Cole has admitted to the crime, to planting the bombs. So it seems that this guy will be wrapped up in short order. But I think the lingering question we're going to have here is, why did the Biden administration not do something about this when they had the evidence, when they spent 4 years talking about January 6th? Really, they're still talking about it, so 5 years at this point and running. They chose not to go after the one person who meant to do real damage. I think that's very strange. And, you know, there's been quite a few things that point to individuals in that administration evading their duties. I think that happens to some degree in every administration, whether it's true or it's just optics. It happens to some degree. I mean, as a conservative, I've had concerns about Pam Bondi's handling of the Epstein files. Of course. I mean, it's been disastrous, at least from an optics perspective, probably more than that. But there's been so many individuals in the Biden administration who seem to not carry out their duties because of political partisanship. Merrick Garland spying on Catholic churches. The pro-lifers that were had their homes raided and were thrown into jail over standing outside of abortion clinics with signs. Just some serious infringements on the rights of Americans, and leaving an attempted mass murderer on the street for 5 years, make no mistake, is an infringement on Americans' rights, because this guy is obviously unhinged and very dangerous. The other piece here is, it's obvious this guy has mental condition, but I really don't want to see any sort of insanity plea nonsense. We've seen a number of those, even just this year. I've covered them on my channel. There's been a number of these insanity pleas where somebody then, in just a few years, can get out of prison, go right back on the street and commit more crimes. Every person who commits a crime like this is insane. They all have problems. That doesn't mean they should be able to be free. to go back out into the public and victimize more people. It's actually, honestly, it means quite the opposite. They should go back to prison. They should stay in prison for a very long time, probably forever, if they're attempting mass murder. So, yeah, hopefully justice is carried out in the proper way here. I do have a lot of confidence in Kash Patel and Dan Bongino. They did incredible work here. I know Dan Bongino worked very hard on this case, and you know, you have to applaud these individuals for taking information that they didn't even acquire, that the Biden administration acquired, and making the arrest finally, making more Americans safe, making it less likely we have another case like this. So if you're still watching to this point, thank you so much. You're helping my channel out a ton just by staying tuned. This is a very new channel, and this was spurred on really by Charlie Kirk's assassination. I'm doing this because I want to see a more unified country that uses common sense when they view politics and the political order. And, you know, we might not be able to agree on everything, but hopefully you can sense that I want us to be able to agree to disagree. I want this nation to be a place where we don't hate each other just because we disagree on a thing. And as long as we are all using our reason when it comes to formulating our opinions on politics and culture, we should be in a good place to converse with each other. So if you're around, please comment below. Let me know what you disagree with, what you did agree with, what you think I should change. Subscribe to the channel. This is how the channel grows. If you guys don't like my content, the channel's not going to grow and this won't stick around. But I would like to stick around. I would like to keep engaging with you guys. So thank you so much for watching. Have a great day. I'm Jared Justin, and this has been Justin Perspective.